This is Josie Brown with Author Provocateur. My guest today is Tina DeSalvo, a powerhouse in contemporary romantic fiction. She'll be joining me at the Barbara Vay Reader Appreciation Weekend 2018 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. There, she'll be showcasing her Second Chance series, as well as a new series, Cloud Hill, which is set in the Rocky Mountains. I am so happy to talk to you. I mean, just so happy to talk to you.
Know.
We both come from very similar backgrounds. We both started out as journalists. So, as a journalist, a sister journalist, let me call you that.
Okay, great.
Do you feel that training helped you in writing your stories?
Absolutely. It has really trained me to be a deadline girl. I have a very fond affection of deadlines. If I don't have a deadline when I'm writing, I tend to not feel hurried or a need to finish as much as I do when I have a deadline. So that's a wonderful benefit of it. But it's interesting. I went into journalism because I love to write and I love to tell a story. I just didn't know that people actually made a living at being a published author and writing fiction. And that's even questionable, isn't it?
Right.
But I just love to tell the story. And so I began in sports broadcasting,
Wow.
which is really interesting. But my training in school was communication arts journalism.
Wow.
And the broadcasting. And so, yeah. So it does help.
Now, did you do TV or radio?
Both.
Oh,
I
good.
did small market. So I only did just assignments for networks. Usually when we had hurricanes down in South Louisiana, we needed a local person to do a report. And so I did many, many of those so they didn't have to send a reporter. And that was the days when they didn't like to send someone down because that involved a satellite truck and, just a lot of extra equipment that is not necessary today. So,
right.
I was TV. I did TV and radio because we did have both in the market where I was and in the company I worked for. So we did a nightly newscast, and then eventually it moved to a 5-minute insertion on CNN headline news. They used to provide an insertion time for local news.
Right.
At 6 minutes before the hour, and we'd go in and do our headlines, and then if there was something more we needed to do, then we went in and did the 30 minutes, or we did a 30-minute interview program that we did twice a week.
Wow.
So, that's kind of where, it's interesting how it's evolved over the years. And then radio, I did morning drive primarily. And so, those early mornings.
Oh, my God.
They are finding the news, making the beat calls, what happened overnight and that sort of thing. So
now
but I did meet a lot of interesting people, though, Josie, and that is an inspiration to a lot of my stories, because feature stories were my favorite thing, and really getting to know people and seeing them in their most triumphant times or the most challenging, and really getting in with them, sitting at their kitchen table and having a cup of coffee and walking through whatever it was at that moment, really just touched my heart and really made me want to tell their story.
Wow. And it's so funny too. I do see it in your writing because there's a depth to your writing that some authors just don't have. And I can see where you're drilling down, and I can imagine you as a reporter doing the same thing to pull the story out of the interview, just kind of say, so that, because people get shy in interviews, they don't know what to say, they stumble around.
Right.
And it takes a very special person to say, okay, what's the real story here, and to pull that quote unquote sound bite out of them, that's not just quote unquote usable, but
Right.
that you can, that actually tells the heart of the story.
And I was very much concerned about breaking up what they were saying, editing it. You know how you can do that with a cutaway
Right.
shot. you can say if they're saying something and then they stumble and then they stumble and then you piece it together and you do a cutaway. You don't actually see that you chopped it a little bit. And I never wanted to do that. So I really worked with them to tell it to me as they would tell me. So I did do a lot of sitting at kitchen tables with a cup of coffee and that sort of thing, because I wanted the story to be true and authentic and not have to splice it
Right,
together.
right. I haven't read all of your books, but I would imagine that, you would have had a reporter heroine at one point in time. Did you ever go that route?
I haven't yet. I haven't. This last story, Abby, I had the paparazzi coming because I am watching the trends. And because, this is 30 years ago that I actually started, over 30 years that I started in the business. And there's been so many different trends. So I addressed a little bit of the paparazzi chasing my heroine. So I
Right.
took it from that point of view.
Yes.
Different. It's a different kind of, complex thing that's going on today.
Right. Well, it's funny too because, Abby, which is the third novel in your Second Chances series, um,
Mhm.
to me, kind of like she's a fun person. You can, she's very heartfelt. And what was your process for coming up with her story?
Well, I met Abby, met Abby in Ellie's story. She and Ellie went through breast cancer together as
Right.
best friends. And you
Right.
develop these bonds with people. I'm a breast cancer survivor, and October is very important to me, and I spend a lot of time. But I reflect on how you bond with the caregivers who are taking care of you, your doctors, and the people sitting next to you in the chemo chair. And so Abby came from that. And so her journey through cancer was quite different than Ellie, the first heroine of my books. And so she was an earlier stage, she had an earlier detection, but nonetheless, she went through this journey and they had this special, special bond. So that's where Abby came from. But then I started thinking, it's really important, and this goes to the reporter things that you were talking about. There's like a theme, there's a point to your story. So if you're reporting on a story, there's a point to it. Someone's house got flooded. It was, poor drainage, the storm, whatever that point is. So we call it themes in
Right.
fiction writing.
Right.
So Ellie's theme was more picking up the pieces, learning how to live after going through cancer. Well, Abby had her own hardships. She is Hollywood royalty. It was about making a mistake when you're young in the public eye. Think through Barrymore and the Barrymores and,
Right.
generational Hollywood types. And she's in there, but she can't act, she can't sing, she can't dance. But
She's
a
she's
smart
not a
girl.
triple threat.
No, but she made some mistakes when she was 17, and they followed her whole life. It was an attribute to her name. Anytime her name came up in the media, it was, the mistake she made. It was always tagged with that because we tend to do that. We label people.
Right.
And so her story came from that hardship. So yes, and I felt that. I just felt that, how do you overcome this? How do you deal with this when people don't let you forget your mistakes? And then you have a new mistake now that's very similar to the old one. And there you go. We have a story.
Exactly. Exactly. And of course, the hero who's trying to throw this back at her, certainly,
Right?
that's not usually the way you endear yourself to a woman at all. But
No. And she's stuck. So she is stuck and he's kind of stuck with her. So normally you would just remove yourself from a situation that's not working for you, but she doesn't have a whole lot of choices. The situation has put her in this, it's cornered her, and he's back. He's back home after being away, and he's decided no. He ran away from home basically to get away from his youthful some problems in his youth, and without saying too much,
youthful
and,
indiscretions.
Yeah, but it kind of wasn't his fault, but it still got pointed at him, that kind of thing, where Abby's was her fault. But so here he is. He's back, and and he wants to live where he is. He wants to reestablish himself home, and she represents like somebody that's just there temporarily and leaving. So yeah, that's their conflict, and he's stuck and she's stuck, but they have to get unstuck.
Right. And they have to have their happily ever after as well.
Of course.
Of
Oh my
course.
God. I am not ever writing anything that's not happily ever after again. I had too many years of that, too many tragedies covering things that I went from sports into regular news, and it just was very emotional, very trying. It's not happening anymore.
I do feel that our readers are looking for something that is not a fantasy per se, but a happy reality.
Right, right. Happy finale.
Yeah.
We when I was going through cancer, I didn't want to be so immersed in heavy, heavy things. I wanted to watch those romantic comedies, and I wanted to smile, and I wanted to be there and not in a place that I could watch on the evening news, or or just look around my family or whatever it was. So I think romance is wonderful for that reason. And I love the fact that we could do varying degrees of heat and sensuality and actually the romance part, but we still wind up in the same place.
Exactly.
Happily ever after.
Yeah, it's fun to see the passion level that an author can bring with a few words. I mean, words do paint
Right.
a wonderful picture, and I think you are definitely one of the artists in that area. You've got a
Oh my
very,
gosh, thank
very,
you.
very broad stroke that paints a beautiful picture.
Oh, thank you so much. I think the fact that I love people, I really do like people. I kind of isolate myself. There's no doubt about that. As authors, we tend to do that. But when I'm with people, I really like them, and I see the good in them. And so I think it makes me happy to write these characters and to explore them as people. So thank you for saying that. I mean, it's really important to me that. That I convey that I like people, and I hope that the people I write about, are likable, and you want to read about them, and you want to fall in love with them, or you want to hate them.
Right.
Whatever the case may be.
Well, you want to appreciate who they are and go with them on the journey. And you've created some wonderful journeys thus far for your readers, and I think that's what
Oh,
makes you
thank
such a
you.
satisfying read. I want to ask you. So, what's the next book on your horizon?
In March or April, probably March, I have. I can't believe this. I'm writing historical western. I was
Wow.
so inspired. I know it's written, and I'm in the editing process, and that can take a little time. I was so inspired when I went to Lake Tahoe years ago. And visited Virginia City, and I was inspired by some of the stories I heard of the early people settling there. One in particular was a painted lady
Ah.
who was in this town when it was a tent city, and she was, doing her thing and making her living, but she was the only one there of her profession. And she stayed there, and she continued to stay, and she became quite an icon in Virginia City. And she used to do backdoor doctoring and help women at the back door,
Ah.
people that were women in regular day of life that were abused and so forth. So I didn't write her story, although I'd like to maybe one day. But at her death, the town came out, and the men who appreciated her being there through thick and thin were on the street and formed a line. And the women of the town, who normally wouldn't celebrate a life of someone of her profession, also came out and honored her. And they
Wow.
actually buried her in her own little plot area. They didn't put her in with the regular community, but they didn't put her in the pauper and the bad people place. They had a special place for her.
Right.
And I just thought that was such an incredible story. And then I did the what if, like we all do. So my story is it involves her life and then the life of a young lady who comes to town. So they kind of I wove it together. So that's kind of what that story was about.
I think it's great, and
Crazy.
I'm
And
sure that the research was fun on this book, and also just bringing these people to life in a time period that we all, fantasize about. I mean, we've all seen westerns or fell in love with books about westerns, and you'll probably that'll be a book that future generations of readers will also fall in love with and fantasize about being there.
I hope so. It's funny how these stories come to you. Also, I have the Cloud Hill series of four sisters, estranged sisters who have to come together, and it's in the Rocky Mountains. So I've primarily been writing about South Louisiana where I live.
Right.
But I also have a second home. I consider it a second home in the Rocky Mountains. And I just have fallen in love with the people there, their heartiness and their can-do attitude and that sort of thing, and just the beauty of the area. So the first book in the series is a Christmas novella.
Right.
And then I'm going to have the four sisters for the 4 seasons that they're there in this little community. So I'm looking forward to that as well because it takes me into a place I love. I just love the mountains. So, I come from below sea level, and now I'm going way up above. So it's been kind of a real big diversity for me. But the people at heart are all the same. And they all are, people love family. They love their life. They love their community. They love the surroundings they live in.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to writing these 4 sisters who are very different, each of them, but have more similarities than they even realize. But I'm going to teach them.
So what will be the name of that series? And
it's called the Cloud Hill series. So it's at the Inn in Cloud Hill. All the books will have, it's Christmas at the Inn in Cloud Hill, and it's part of the Nutcracker Reimagined Christmas collection, which I am so honored to be part of, with some amazing authors. They invited me in, they've welcomed me, and it's multi-genre. So we're going to have historicals and paranormal, and mine's a contemporary.
Wow.
And the whole series is going to be a contemporary. So it's called the Cloud Hill. So hopefully that'll be out. It's probably in the summer. I'm probably going to have my first full length in that story.
Wow.
So,
and also your historical. What will that? What's the title for that? And do you know when you might be launching?
The Fathers of Victoria Gallen, and it's going to be out in time for Romantic Times in Reno, Nevada. I'm timing it especially, so I'll have that new book, and it's a Western setting. And because the last time I was in Reno is what inspired me for this story, and Virginia City is not far away.
Right. So that'll also be. You'll also have that book at Barbara Vay, I presume.
Yes, I will. That's the plan, to have it actually released at Barbara Vay and then bring it to RT afterwards.
It's always a pleasure speaking to you, but it's going to be great to see you. And I know that all the Barbara Vay readers are going to be so excited to have you again and know that you've got another wonderful book ready, willing, and able for them to pick up and have right there at your table. So I look forward to that.
Yes, me too. And I really do love this again. I had Smith last year, and I don't ever want to miss. I just feel so close to the people there. I've learned about Kopp's frozen custard from them. I still can't pronounce most of their last names, but I suspect they can't pronounce most of the names here in South Louisiana country. So we're alike in that. But I love their food. I love their attitude and their spirit of enjoying life. And so it is such a pleasure. And Barbara Vay, of course, and her family, just remarkable people. And they put on such a wonderful event. And it's just so much fun. So I am thrilled that I was asked to return. And I hope I continue to be asked for years to come.
Want to hear more about the authors who will be attending the Barbara Vay Reader Appreciation Weekend? Just go to my website, authorprovocateur.com, and click on to the other interviews. You'll also find them on the event's Facebook page. And beneath each interview, feel free to leave a comment about your favorite part of it. Doing so puts you in the running for a bundle of the author's books. Listeners can leave one comment per author to be entered for the drawing. This is Josie Brown of Author Provocateur, signing off.